William Sidney Porter, better known as O. Henry, was a great American short story writer. He wrote about 300 to 400 short stories, and he was known for having twist endings. A good example of which is The Gifts of the Magi, which is probably his most famous story. It's about a poor couple who want to buy each other Christmas presents. She has this long, luxurious hair that she cuts to buy her husband a fob for his pocket watch. Meanwhile, he sells his pocket watch to buy her these combs that she's been coveting for her long hair. And so a lot of people know O. Henry as a New York short story writer. That's where he wrote a lot of his stories the last 10, 12 years of his life. But he cut his teeth here in Austin, starting right here in this house. This has been a museum since 1934. And what people can find when they come here is a middle-class house that's 3 rooms. There's a parlor, which we're standing in right now. There is a bedroom, and there is a dining room, and a porch that used to be called a sleeping porch. It wasn't enclosed, it is now. He moved to Texas in his early 20s from Greensboro, North Carolina, partly out of wanderlust and partly because he had a job. He started as a sheep herder on a ranch in Cotulla, which is south of San Antonio. After a couple of years there, he made his way up to Austin and met his wife, Athol, had a daughter named Margaret. And here in Austin, he had 2 day jobs that he worked while he was honing his skills as a writer. The first one was as a draftsman at the Texas General Land Office. He was an exceptional illustrator, and so he drew maps for them. And he was known for drawing little scenes and little characters on the perimeter, which is something that his coworkers thought was pretty clever. His second job was as a teller at the First National Bank of Austin, and it's there where his life sort of took a twist for real. He was found to be embezzling money. We think it was about $850. And some people said he was guilty. Some people said he wasn't. Some people said he wasn't equipped to be a teller. He was preoccupied behind the teller cage, writing, what have you. In any case, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison in Columbus, Ohio. Served about 3.5. It looks like he came up with the pen name pretty much concurrent with being in prison. He was really embarrassed by the whole ordeal and tried to keep a low profile in prison, and I think that was his way of sort of masking his identity a little bit. He might have toyed with the name prior to prison, but I think he really adopted it in earnest once he got there and sort of transformed himself into becoming a full-time writer. There's a biography on him called Time to Write, and it basically says how once he got to prison, he was free of all the burdens of real life and was able to write and had time. We don't really know where the pen name came from. There are a couple theories on the pen name. One is that there's a French chemist, and I'm sorry if I butcher this name, but Ocean, there's an O and an H, and they think that he may have grabbed from that because when he lived in North Carolina, his uncle ran a pharmacy, so he was familiar with the drugstore kind of experience. Another theory is that he had a cat here in Austin named Henry. Oh, Henry, oh, Henry. There was another theory that one of his favorite bartenders was named Henry, and the same kind of deal. But there's also thinking that Ohio Penitentiary is sort of an anagram from that. So about a third of the items in here are original. The rest are mostly period pieces. Here in the parlor we have some really cool items. Behind me is a desk that he wrote on, belonged to a friend of his here in town. We have his original dictionary that he brought to Texas from North Carolina that is really worn in and an amazing artifact because he has an exceptional vocabulary, and it's fun to look through that. We have a piano that his wife played that's here, that's original, rosewood with mother of pearl inlay. Music was something that brought O. Henry, William Sidney Porter, and his wife Athol together. They performed together in the Gilbert and Sullivan Society. He was in a quartet and was also a singer. We have the only known recording of O. Henry's voice. It's about 1.5 minutes, and he's talking about the craft of writing.
All of my stories are actual experiences that I've come across during my travels. My characters are of actual people I've known. Most authors spend hours, not told even days, laboring over outlines of stories they have in their minds. But not I. In my way of thinking, that's a waste of good time. I just sit down and let my pencil do the rest.
We have beautiful wooden wicker rocking chairs that his wife purchased, along with the landscape print here in the house. The story behind that is that Will had set aside some money for Athol to attend the Chicago World Fair, and she decided instead of spending the money on herself, she'd buy some things for the family to enjoy. So she bought these two wicker rocking chairs and a landscape print. And we like to say that that act of selflessness might have been an inspiration for Gifts of the Magi. After prison, he moved to New York, and he was an extremely popular writer the last 10, 12 years of his life. He wrote constantly. He had a contract with the New York World newspaper to write a story a week, which lasted for about 2.5 years. It was during that time that he wrote Gifts of the Magi. Because that was a weekly story that he was writing for the New York World for about 2.5 years, it was something that people kind of waited for in anticipation every week. I like to equate it to one of my favorite movies, A Christmas Story. The kids gather around for the Little Orphan Annie radio program. I think it's sort of the same kind of concept. And what I think is one of the remarkable things about this museum, it's been a museum since 1934, and he passed shortly after 1910, is that literature had changed so much by that point with the introduction of Hemingway and Fitzgerald and whatnot. A lot of people kind of thought the twist ending thing was a little kitschy, you know. It works really well sometimes, and sometimes he sort of painted himself into a corner and had to, you know, pull the rug out. So I think over time he is maybe not as regarded as highly States, but we get a lot of visitors from Asia, Japan, Korea, Russia, where some of these tales are sort of universal tales that they've tweaked, and they resonate across the world. I think what makes O. Henry popular is that he dealt with universal themes, like Gifts of the Magi. I mean, you know, everybody knows what it's like to rub 2 nickels together to buy a present for someone, or he also is he's sort of a champion of the marginalized. I mean, a lot of his stories, the subjects are about the regular old people, and that's mostly in New York. For example, a great story is The Cop and the Anthem, and it's about a homeless person who is, you know, trying to get arrested so he can spend the night in jail and have a warm night and a meal. And he ends up instead finding salvation in another way, and that's sort of the twist ending. But I think O. Henry characters are the #1 thing that people, I think, enjoy when they read a story, and the characters that O. Henry depicts are me and you. So in telling our stories, it's sort of a fictionalized nonfiction world. What I want people to take away when they come to the museum is the fact that there's a number of stories in O. Henry's catalog that are based here in Texas, and if you think of him as a New York writer and you're going, well, why is he talking about these storylines or whatnot? So that's important to fill in those gaps, and it also allows you to talk about that O. Henry was really one of the first waves of Western writers. Some of his stories go back early 1903-ish area, that compete with stories like The Virginian, which is considered the first Western story. So it's important to tell those. That's background I think that people don't know. They're so used to the New York City lifestyle stories. And I like people to be able to use it as a portal to learn more about Austin history.
I hope that this little talk will be heard long after I'm gone. I want you all to continue reading my stories then